Alright, welcome back to 1d8 plus 1, the Leaner Orbs, and dimming Sage Block 9. Let's see, 1d8 plus 1 is more for role-playing stuff type thing, but of late, it was actually the kickoff of a lot of other things because of the Cure Light type thing in that type of sense. But of late, everything that I've been doing in role-playing has been associated with, what do you call a lot of frequency distributions, normal curves, uh, trend lines, or forecasting, or things of that nature for our character type thing, although way on the simpler scale. So, in those types of things, since we've been blocking things off by numbers, I have been uh, really avoiding doing this. I've been, what do you call, saying that it's more the dimming Sage Block 9 type thing that type of sense, dealing with W.E. Dimmings and Dr. Dimming's work and his thing with control limits. Control limits, actually, if you take the two tails and combine them type thing in that type of sense, it's kind of hard to imagine type thing here. Uh, let's see, I know where I want to write on this type thing. Your tail has one, and so does the upper control limit type thing, but it's hard to see type thing because you don't usually use it every day. Upper control limit, lower control limit type thing in that type of sense. And this has to be turned on its side type thing in that type of sense. So we're going to bring this downwards type thing in that type of sense. That's upper control limit. And that's lower control limit type thing in that type of sense. Now we're going to draw a bell curve type thing. That's on the central tendency type thing in that type of sense. That's a central limit there type thing in that type of thing. It feels like the amplitude type thing of a sinusoidal wave type thing in that type of sense. But in actuality type thing, this is over the upper control limit type thing there. And that's at 90, and that's like at 0 type thing in that type of sense, and this is 70. And 90 is bigger than 70 type thing in that type of sense by 20. So 70 is really just the average score type thing in that type of sense. And the 90 was the A score type thing, or A minus on a test, and then 70 is a C type thing in that type of sense. And that's an A and that's an F type thing. So A, C, and F type thing in that type of sense. You use this to see how skewed a population is type thing in that type of sense, for what their central tendency is in a test score, or say like a fitness report, drug testing, things like that in that type of sense. You can work backwards out of it. That type of thing. We did a central frequency distribution type thing. We had a skewed one. Uh, you can have a skewed one type thing in that type of sense, and the wave is not as central type thing. It's more centered towards the upper control limit type thing in that type of sense. Oops. And that was our intelligence skill and say out to boom type thing in that type of sense, with like profession wisdom, I think, or something like that. Your perception through your job or something in that nature type thing. I don't think they had any deck skills in mage and things like that. And when we did the fighter, it was strength type thing in that type of sense, and I think there was intelligence of craft. The other ones were dex related type thing. So a fighter was strength and dexterity type thing in that type of sense. From the frequency distribution type thing in that type of sense of dimming type thing in that means. And that helped put points into the character build type thing for their attributes or abilities type thing. And I think the book uses abilities type thing in that type of sense. And so then had 10 points type thing, made a 16 string, and then another 10 points, which adds up to 20. Those are points, and then that's score. And that's 16 and 16 dexterity and 16 strength. And then let's go 10 here, 16 here, 10 here, and 16 here for points and score. That adds up to 20. Then along that line, type thing in that type of sense, there's another thing here. We're going to call this baseball inning 1, baseball inning 2, and that's plus 3 modifier, and 16 has a plus 3 modifier, and that type of thing. So, just working through. That's the one after you establish the 16 score from your points. You're going to be using the modifier in your reflex saving throw. Your initiative should be miscellaneous plus dexterity modifier, which is that plus 3 type thing. Your armor class has a dex modifier in it type thing. Your ride skill is dexterity base, which is plus 3. Strength is for like bending bars or carrying capacity, so that plus 3 modifier might come into a strength check type thing. Any ability check type thing I think is done with a d20 plus your modifier type thing, that type of sense. Things like that in that type of sense. So if you're in a tangle, that's a d20 strength check plus 3 type thing, or 23 escape out strength the Wii to DC 20 check. in the spell. Uh, Things of that nature type thing in that type of sense. But if you had a 7 strength, that's a -2 modifier, so it will roll a d20. DM might give you the critical roll of 19 type thing in that type of sense, -2, a 17 check type thing, which is short of the 20 type thing in that type of sense. So those minus modifiers, the neutralities type thing in that character could or could not, depending. But in a different situation, if for a Salta, he has a bad strength, but it gave him a 20 intelligence type thing. So if it was like an intelligence check, he's got like a +5 modifier, roll a 17 type thing, +5, 22 check type thing, and some other type of puzzle check type thing in that type of sense, and he might have bought a clue through. Those are interesting things in that type of sense. But anyway, and again, of course, 6 abilities over a skewed curve type thing is the expensive type thing of doing all those types of things. But the whole point of this type thing, from these frequency distributions type thing, in mixing ideology of do I want to be smarter or stronger or have some dexterity, could build a pulley type thing in that type of sense. But in some Heplite troop thing or Spartan troop thing type thing in that type of sense, really still can't last the Mohicans and run from one place to the other without the modern will type thing in that type of sense. And in certain time factors that could become important type thing in that type of sense. Kind of like Finch and Person of Interest or something like that. As that's pushed back type thing, it's not reality. But and sometimes he's struggled because he's been smarter than everybody, but he can't get a cab or a car ride over there with his bad leg and stuff like that in that type of sense. So, and the timing of him type thing without Reese type thing was of some critical value type thing. Same in Gattaca and things of that nature. Things that I don't want to get into, but this whole thing is about the football thing right now, taking that type of sense as a leap off point, taking that type of sense. I wanted to do a video about playoffs, taking that type of sense, rather than demonstrate our ability to be glimmer weird. So it just, I see you have a thing for Northern Lights. And so that's it is not that type of thing. Those are good things to know. Pretty much everything in that type of sense, of ideology of looking at it type thing, the frequency distribution, how many stats happen type thing in that type of sense. But after you look at the stats type thing, you're looking to put it in your dexterity or strength or intelligence. You're making decisions about your own athlete or unathlete Spice Girl association type thing in that type of sense. Some of them are athletic, but I don't think all of them are as athletic as Sporty Spice type thing. Or the other Spice Girl type thing. Posh Spice worked out type thing, but she was kind of toned. And good tone is a good thing on a body type thing and not overly muscular. For some people it isn't type thing. And Ginger Spice wasn't. She was toned, but I don't think she had an excessive workout schedule type thing. So now her dexterity or strength might be different from her intelligence or wisdom or charisma type thing, that type of sense. So even though you made number choices type thing, you were really making choices about the persons type thing, and that means because you were making a choice to say that she wasn't that agile type thing, or she wasn't as strong, but she was charismatic, or she had good streetwise sense type thing, that type of sense, or perception, which made she had high wisdom. So in that type of thing, the wisdom was a number type thing, that type of sense. So that's wrong. So then that's 18, and then the wisdom type thing in that type of sense. And then you take the wisdom out, take the 18 out type thing, and then you never discuss wisdom type thing, and that means. So you never really discussed anything but a numerical concept type thing, and that means that sense. So same thing is for football type thing. The reason why I got into these types of things because people are always telling you that things are working up to some other conditioning type thing, conditioning to yourself or environment type thing, when that's not really the case. And I used to watch all the football things all the time type thing, that type of sense. You could never make it just it didn't seem that its presentation was right. It was like Merlin stuff type thing, that type of sense, like Camelot, things of that nature. And I'm like, that's crazy difficult type thing, that type of sense, compared to what's going on. This bracket thing type thing, that type of sense, that's once again, that's number 3 type thing, but 1, 2, 3, and 4, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, and even after elimination and the addition of 2 new players in the next week, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, and 1, 2, 3, 4 lines type thing, that type of sense. Then the twos type thing, and then on to the Super Bowl type thing, that type of sense. And it's really not complicated, but when you start type thing in that type of sense, you'll end with like a 6. You'll start with a 6, and then you're like 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then we've got 4 compass directions type thing in that type of sense, and we've got like these division weekends and stuff like that, and that's 6 times 4 minus 3 type thing and 21, and then there's 32 teams type thing in that type of sense plus 32 divided by 7 for a lucky number or 5 harmony type thing in that type of sense, and that's 10 decimal type thing. So you were wrong, and I'm like, okay, it's not that complicated. So that's not right type thing. Let's start getting some other things set here type thing in that type of sense. Do I have multiples of these type thing in that type of sense? That's the north on a compass type thing in that type of sense. North, east, south, and west, just like a weather vane type thing with the rooster up on the top and like some type of Kansas old school video type thing or old school movie. Like Dorothy in her house in Atlanta had the rooster on the top type thing in that type of sense. And it showed the wind direction blowing type thing from the weather vane. Okay, maybe that's too much of a conversation. That's 1, 2, that's 3 type thing in that type of sense. And that's 4. That's 4 directions type thing in that type of sense. Let's move those over. 1, 2. That's 3 here type thing in that type of thing. And then that's 4 type thing in that type of sense. And that's 4 directions for 4 AFC type thing in that type of sense. 4 compass directions in the AFC type thing. We've got 1 country part type thing here. What do I want to do here type thing in that type of sense? That's the AFC. And that's the NFC type thing. That's Chicago and Detroit in the NFC type thing. That's the Broncos and Kansas City in the AFC type thing in that type of sense. As if the country was 2 countries and some type of French, J.J. Abrams, Shangri-La, Shambhala, twin worlds type thing in that type of sense. To pass through the envelope of one into another type thing, into an alternate parallel mirror universe type thing, a refraction law type thing in that type of sense. Alice in Wonderland walk through the portal thing type thing in that type of sense. Her world and then the new world, then the old world type thing in that type of sense. So that's new world, old world, new world type thing in that type of sense. Those are the same worlds and they're separate. And so that's in that type of thing. That's 1 and 2 type thing in that type of sense. You just go into that type thing and that means. And from there type thing, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 type thing in that type of sense. And then both sides are going to take 2 wild cards type thing after the compass directions inside either the north, south, east, or west type thing. Whoever's got the highest after not being division winners type thing in that type of sense. Same thing in this side type thing. And ironically, in the NFC type thing, parallel universe, and in that type of sense, the people who scored first in their division, then anything in the aftermath, the next 2 highest teams from any of the 4 compass directions type thing with the highest record. Very, very difficult. All these teams in the first ones are 10 and 6 or 11 and 5, 12 and 4 type thing. Let's see who's a fairly interesting one. The Kansas City's like 9 and 1 or 9 and 3, and the Broncos are like 10 and 2 type thing in that type of sense. So the Broncos would win type thing in that type of sense, their division in the AFC West. Now the Chiefs are in the same division with them type thing in that type of sense, and they're 1 win behind them type thing in that type of sense, but they didn't win their division, so they didn't win the West compass direction. They're not in the East division type thing in that type of sense of the AFC, so they can't win that because that's not their geographical location. They can't win the South with the Houston Texans because they're not in the South. And they can't win the North with the Patriots because they're not in the North AFC. They're in the AFC, but they're not in the Northeast quadrant type thing in that type of sense of district, like Hunger Games. And so they can't win those things type thing that they can't be champion and chosen from type thing. So in that type of thing, they have no chance type thing now that the Broncos won the West one type thing in that type of sense. That's correct. But they've got the next highest win type thing after these guys have been all chosen type thing in that type of sense. Then there's the second, third, and fourth type thing from the division type thing in that type of sense. Some of them are 8 and 8, 9 and 7, 10 and 6 type thing in that type of sense. And even though the Chiefs didn't win the West division type thing, and they can't place into the division champion of the North, South, or East type thing in that type of sense. See, now that's North, and that's East, that's West, and that's South type thing. All the compass directions are taken up. There's no place for the Chiefs to fit in there in the West type thing in that type of sense. Their compass direction of the West already has a champion, which is the Broncos. But they can still have the highest win out of the AFC. So in that type of sense, they go in as the highest seed wild card type thing in that type of sense. So even though they serve as the first wild card, and somebody who's like 9 and 7 serves as the second wild card. So compass directions plus 2 wild cards type thing in that type of sense. 4 directions type thing in compass type thing in that type of sense, and plus 2 wild cards type thing. That's 6 seats type thing in that type of sense. Now in here type thing, there were 16 teams in here, and there's 4 directions type thing in that type of sense. That's 16 teams in the AFC divided by 4, and that's 4 teams in each one. 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. 4, 8, 12, 16. 4, 8, 12, 16. 4, 8, 12, 16. NFC 20, 24, 30, 28, 32. So 7 times 4 is 28, plus the 8th division type thing in the compass. That's 32. Very complicated type thing. North, south, east, and west. North, south, east, and west. 4 teams per division, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 divisions type thing. 4 direction compasses for the AFC type thing in that type of sense. 4 direction compasses for the NFC type thing in that type of sense. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times 4 type thing in that type of sense is 32. And you really have to watch how complicated something else can become in between math type thing in that type of sense. Then you could split it, keep divisions with the wild cards while you're making compass directions type thing, and a SEC college bowl thing in that type of sense, and end up with like 17 type thing in that type of sense, plus 10 and 27 teams. You know, in it there was nothing of that going on type thing in that type of sense. Or you don't want to like Shambhala the 2 directions of AFC and NFC type thing in that type of sense. I already broke up the country once. Why would I do it twice type thing? Because that's how the leagues merged type thing. The NFC merged in the first time type thing in that type of sense, from being the National Football League type thing in that type of sense back in the early 60s, 50s or so. Then a competition ticket group, just much like baseball type thing, tried to brand its own faster paced football type thing in that type of sense. And they were competing against each other's ticket sales in the country of the United States. So they decided to shake hands type thing. AFC shook hands with the NFC type thing. And they're like, yeah, but now we don't have a champion type thing. Tell you what, we'll have a giant bowl game at the end of it type thing, much like college, like a national championship type thing, that type of sense. You'll keep the AFC during the season. We'll keep our NFC side type thing, that type of sense. And we'll see who becomes the undisputed football champion, conference champion type thing in that type of sense at the end of the year. Huh? Same country with multiplicity alignment of cities type thing and games type thing, that type of sense. We'll share the same country during that time type thing, that type of sense, and then fight for its control through a Super Bowl at the end. So in that type of thing, both of them go to different alternate cities type thing during a year type thing, AFC and the NFC type thing, and then they find out which one is the champion type thing in that type of sense. Case in point now with this division stuff, which is not complicated but can be made special. And in that type of thing, in that type of sense, that's 4 directions type thing plus the wild card type thing, and that means. So I'm going to kick those out type thing here, and we've got those type thing in that type of sense. Now we've got 4 compass directions and 2 wild cards type thing in that type of sense. The importance type thing of the highest seeds type thing in that type of sense is the fact that they're off the first weekend type thing in that type of sense. Really not complicated. I just made that worse type thing. So they skip the wild card and they go straight to division. Now since they're off type thing, the first seed and the second seed don't face each other type thing, and they move into different brackets type thing in that type of sense. Now the 5th seed and the 6th seed type thing in that type of sense really aren't next to each other type thing. That's the 5th seed and that's the 6th seed type thing in that type of sense. Those are your 2 wild cards. Oops, sorry about that. Let's do the west and east, and then let's say the south and the north type thing. That's the south and that's the north type thing here. That's seat 3 and seat 4. Now the wild cards like Kansas City type thing, that's 5, and maybe the Ravens in seat 6 come in type thing in that type of sense. Now you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 teams on the wild card weekend with wild card teams, and you've got the Denver and like the Patriots are off on the first until the next weekend. So now we need to put a 1 above this type thing in that type of sense, and that's weekend 1 type thing in that type of sense for the wild card. And these guys don't play the weekend 2 type thing in that type of sense. In the old school days, they used to have a open date for all the teams going from like week 9 to week 17 type thing. Take 1 game off of 17 type thing. That's 16 weeks. Every team doesn't play one of their 17 weeks somewhere in the schedule type thing in that type of sense and get a week off. But for some time back then in the day, you would have sit your starters type thing in December after qualifying in at like 12 wins or something like that. You already have 1 loss, so you don't have to worry about the perfect record. give them 2 weeks off type thing to recover type thing in that type of sense. Then get your open day in week 17 type thing, so that's 3 weeks off. Not play the wild card weekend and have 4 weekends off type thing in that type of sense to get your people back from injury and stuff like that. Then play the division weekend. But we don't do that anymore. Since the alignment was great. That's NFC and AFC. The AFC used to have like NFC used to have like 5 or 6 teams in one division, but like 3 in another, made for interesting tie-breaking math and other things like that. Not anymore. Compass direction, just like a Girl Scout, Boy Scout type thing, that type of sense. North, South, East, and West. 4 compass directions, 4 divisions. Pretty straightforward math type thing in that type of sense. And you know who the champions are out of each division. And so in that type of sense, whoever has the most wins in that division type thing is the winner of the division. And so from that type thing in that type of sense, then they fight off type thing in that type of sense. And then this weekend type thing, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams type thing, but 2 of them aren't playing. So now that's 6 type thing in that type of sense. In that type of sense, that's 6 minus 4. Oops, sorry, 6 minus 2. And in that type of thing, that's 4. That's 2 on 2 brackets type thing. And then you're going to have winners and losers from this bracket. The losers are going to stay home from the wild card weekend. The 2 winners of that type thing are going to move into the division weekend. Now that's two people off, plus 2 people who just won in from the wild card weekend. That's 4 teams. And now that creates another 4 bracket type thing in the second weekend. And then it just creates a 2 bracket type thing from the 2 winners of that one type thing in the AFC Championship weekend type thing for a 1 champion type thing from the AFC side type thing versus the 1 champion of the NFC side. Very complicated. Extremely, extremely complicated. So in that type of thing, in that type of sense, from such simplicities type thing, in that type of thing, there are maths type thing that can happen. NFC almost had a 7-win, 9-loss team type thing last year, type thing in that type of sense when the Rams were 3 or 4 years ago. And there was no way to challenge their division type thing. Now somebody in the West type thing or the East, like the NASCAR, or South, like the NASCAR division, the NFC, there might have been a 10-6 team there type thing in that type of sense. And they would have made it in type thing because of their wild card thing type thing in that type of sense with 11-5, 2 11-5 teams and a bunch of 12-4 teams. And not being a division pick winner from the NFC West side of the Rams type thing, that type of sense, even though they're in St. Louis, they go off the Rams one from Los Angeles type thing, that type of sense, and they can't be in the Hunger Games West Division type thing. So the 7-9 winner would trump their 10-6 record type thing, that type of sense, make it into the playoffs type thing, and there's no bylaw to kick out a team that had 1 game less under 500 type thing, that type of sense, and that type of thing. Being that type of thing in that type of sense. It's not complicated. It really isn't. Once again, that's just bad math type thing. That's 500 type thing in that type of sense. That's 50.0. That's 50.0%. You move the decimal over. That's 5.00. Move it over again. That's 0.500. You don't drop the other 0 and you say them all at once. 500. A team that has 500 go all the way back up to the percent type thing. A team that has 50% wins and 50% losses. 16 games type thing divided by 2 type thing. That's 8 wins and 8 losses type thing in that type of sense. But the Rams had 7 wins and 9 losses. They were 1 below 500 type thing in that type of sense. That's 50-50 or 500-500. And if they were 8 wins type thing and 8 losses, they're a 500 team. They won 50.0% of their wins and 50.0 of their losses type thing is that type of thing. So it's 500 split there. 50.0 split towards wins and 50.0 split to their losses. So it went both ways type thing in that type of sense. They were 1 game below that type thing in that type of sense. It's really not complicated, but if you're trying to do it in your head without writing it down type thing in that type of sense, you'll either drop the 0 or you'll drop the decimal type thing in that type of sense, and neither one makes sense in any conversation. Yeah. So in that type of sense, type thing in that type of sense, they had 8 wins type thing in that type of sense minus 1, which means they had 7 wins. And that means they didn't have an even 8 wins, 8 loss record type thing in that type of sense of neutral record. They had a losing record type thing because they had more losses than wins type thing in that type of sense. So now 9 games lost and 7 games won type thing. The losses 9 is greater than 7, so they have a losing record type thing. 8 games win, 8 games lost means they have a losing record type thing because their losses equal their wins type thing in that type of sense. So if that's the case type thing, they have a neutral record, and any team that's got a losing record compared to a neutral record type thing with 7-9 should not go into the playoffs. Yeah, and they did. They were about to type thing, but the Rams won that last game and became an 8-18. Really not complicated type thing in that type of sense, but once again, made complicated. So in that type of sense, and it is a struggle type thing, but it's only a struggle if you want to find that type thing in that type of sense. There was 17 games type thing in that type of sense. 17 minus the off day type thing in that type of sense. And that's minus 1. That's minus 1 type thing in that type of sense. Is 16 type thing in that type of sense. That's 17 minus 1 is 16 games divided by 2 type thing for equal wins and losses. That's 8 wins, 8 losses type thing. 8 wins plus 8 losses type thing in that type of sense, even though their losses still count as attempts type thing in that type of sense. That's 16 attempted games, even though they didn't win all of them type thing in that type of sense. Again, very complicated type thing in that type of sense. That's the AFC side type thing in that type of sense, and NFC. And I guess I didn't explain it type thing in that type of sense, but I think somebody's looking in there for more fight than necessary type thing. And so that's the directions type thing and the seeds type thing in that type of sense. From that type of thing, that first weekend, both the wild card wins type thing, or Kansas City goes up type thing. They face maybe Denver again, and the 6 goes up the Ravens, and they face the Patriots type thing in that type of sense. Same old type thing in that type of sense. Sometimes the 3 and 4 couldn't have switched if that was like Miami or the Jets or something like that in that type of sense. Then it would have been the Jets versus the Broncos or something like that and that type of thing, and versus Peyton Manning and the Broncos with no-show Marino, and it would have been something else like Miami versus the Patriots or the Ravens versus Chargers or something like that. So it's hard to say type thing in that type of sense. So it's 1-5, 2-6. That's still the West type thing. So I didn't really get or Buffalo or something like that and that type of thing. And then Buffalo versus Broncos type thing in a championship game or something like that, or Broncos versus the Jets in a championship game of utility. Yeah. And so in that type of sense, that could have been interesting or really boring. And in that type of thing, in that type of sense, it's hard to say. But that's maybe the same old. Now we're in the second weekend type thing in that type of sense. 1 beats out 5 type thing in that type of sense. And in that type of thing, 2 beats out 6 beats out 2. And then that's the AFC Championship game type thing in that type of sense. And we'll stop there. And that's the third weekend type thing in that type of sense. I'm telling you, like, most of the times when I'm explaining these things and before people even see them type thing, it's that complicated type thing in that type of sense. And then they look at other people and like, bam, like 6 seconds or less type thing in that type of sense. 1 round. And that's it. They can't believe that you can't come up with it. That's how simple it was. So in that type of thing, in that type of sense, thank you. So that's 1, that's 2, that's 3 type thing in that type of sense. That's 4 directions. And then that's your wild cards for the NFC type thing in that type of sense. That's 5 and 6 type thing in that type of sense. Back to the first weekend again type thing in that type of sense. The first and the second seed type thing, it could be the Saints or somebody. They're off the first weekend. They don't play the wild card weekend. They won too many games to be considered wild card contenders. And so they're not there type thing in that type of sense. They even have to play backwards to the wild card weekend people type thing. And same with who's ever going second. I don't know who's going to go second in the NFC this year type thing. I'm trying to think of somebody in the NFC. You got Rams. It'll probably be the Detroit Lions. And so in that type of thing, I think Stratford, Sue, Dominic Sue, great job on staying, being an adult about getting help with it, and that whole ratchet up to 6th gear kill mentality type thing that sometimes drilled into them type thing in that type of sense. Controlling that and becoming a real force of nature. Him and Chris Long and other people like that have got a real torque to themselves to changing the field of action type thing out there. The changing the theater of turf or something like that. They're really good at what they do. That's first and second. Chris Long is Howie Long Sung type thing, that type of sense, playing opposite Quinn on the Rams. Defensive ends becoming kind of wrong. Chicago might make it in that type of sense, and that might force Detroit to play a wild card. But I think Detroit won this weekend, and that'll put Chicago in the wild card weekend. Because they won't win in their division type thing, so they'll have to go in as the 5th seed wild card type thing in that type of sense. And that'll make Detroit the first weekend off type thing. So that's Chicago. I'm not sure it's going to go 3rd and 4th because Chicago and Detroit are both in the NFC North. And so with Green Bay type thing in that type of sense, only one of them can be the North winner type thing in that type of sense. And the other one's going to have a high win record type thing that has to go in as a wild card type thing, and that means. And as soon as they become, that'll either make them the 5th seed out of the 4 directions type thing, because they can't win the North, so that's 1 down. Now Chicago's in the South type thing in that type of sense. They can't win that one. They can't win the East one type thing in that type of sense, and that's gone. And then they can't win the West one type thing. That's where the Rams are type thing. Los Angeles, without St. Louis playing in St. Louis type thing, used to be out in California type thing in that type of sense. That's why they still have the West designator type thing. And Chicago, even though they played games against the Rams type thing, aren't West Division Hunger Game chosen type thing in that type of sense, so they can't win the West. There's only 2 spots left for them type thing. The 5th seed or the 6th seed is a wild card type thing, and they've got too many wins to be the 6th seed, so they go in as the 5th seed type thing in that type of sense. 5th seeds don't play on division weekend, they play on the first weekend type thing in that type of sense, and boom. Yeah. So in that type of sense, complicated, yes. Saints will go in type thing in that type of sense. I'm trying to think who's got, that'll be Detroit. And then they'll play in the division weekend, and then Chicago will have to come in as a wild card type thing, even though I'm not sure who's on. The East has got to get its stuff together with the Redskins. It'll probably be Dallas, so it'll probably be Chicago and Dallas in the wild card weekend type thing. Or it'll be NFC East is things in Dallas, Philadelphia, and Redskins, I think, and the Giants. New York Giants instead of the New York Jets type thing, that type of sense. The Jets type thing are their AFC in New York, and the Giants are their NFC type thing. That's inside the city. Buffalo, New York is like upstate New York type thing. It's almost like Boston, Massachusetts type thing. But it's not in the city type thing of New York. I think that's Albany, New York type thing, that type of thing. Oh, that's out in the countryside of New York. And the one that gets that 2.5 foot of snow type thing per year type thing, that type of sense. That's what that's going on with. But that history lesson type thing is problematic to an actual rollout of Pokédex beliefs type thing, that type of sense. Yeah. That's 3 and 5. Then that's 4 and 6 facing off against each other. Seats next to each other really don't play each other in these March Madness brackets type thing. So 1 and 2 are off, but they don't face each other. Detroit won't play the Saints type thing in the first weekend. Detroit and the Saints will take on the winners from these type thing. 4 games, half of them will become losers, half of them become winners type thing. Let's say Chicago wins, that's 5 and 4 wins type thing in that type of sense. And this one type thing, those are the losers. They're eliminated and stay home. These are the winners, and they go into the openings or the brackets of the Detroit and the Saints one type thing in that type of sense. And then it's 1 versus 5, so Detroit would play, the Chicago would play the Saints, and Detroit would play whoever the 4th seed is type thing in that type of sense. In the NFC, NFC South is the NASCAR division. That's Tampa Bay, probably Carolina Panthers. And so in that type of thing, that's a lot going on there type thing. Panthers versus Detroit, and Chicago versus Saints. Then they'll go into their NFC Championship type thing, and that's another 4 bracket of March Madness type thing from its 16 brackets of 4. So that's 64 competitions type thing, and then to 32, and then to 16, the Sweet 16. And then there's an S on the 16 type thing, so you got to start a letter to describe them, like sultry 16, satisfying 16, sweet 16 type thing in that type of sense. And then you get into the 8, so you need something, the 11-8, the elevator 8, escalator 8, ecology 8 type thing in that type of sense. Or in that type of thing, to make a Johnny Cochran thing of those buzzwords type thing, the same letter twice type thing in a row, the Elite 8. And then in that type of sense, you divide that by the losers type thing and winners, you get 4. So something, 4 starts with an F, so you need another F, the Fiat 4, the Fantastic 4, but it's the Final 4. And then in that type of thing, I'm not sure what they call the Final 2, and that the Tremendous 2 or something like that in that type of sense. It's not that complicated, once again, type thing in that type of sense. That's 8 teams type thing remaining in there type thing. That starts with an E, and that's going to be an E here, and that's ELITE type thing, Elite 8 type thing in that type of sense. That's 16 teams here spelled out in that type of thing. That's beforehand. And it starts with an S, starts with an S, SWEET type thing. If you're a Scrabble, Wheel of Fortune person type thing, that makes sense of some type of word bobbling type thing. Otherwise, type thing, once again, that was a challenge. And so, in that type of thing, and that's not cool. Saints probably win, type thing in that type of sense. They go to the NFC Championship, type thing in that type of sense. And Panthers will probably win, type thing in that type of sense. And they'll go on, type thing in that type of sense, for Cam Newton, type thing, versus Drew Brees in the NFC Championship. And we've got Broncos versus. Did I put Kansas City in there? I didn't put Kansas City in there, type thing. Probably Broncos versus Ravens, type thing, for some type of scare. I didn't do the San Francisco 49ers. It'll probably come to that. It'll either be Kaepernick versus Drew Brees, or it'll be, at some point, Kaepernick and Cam Newton to go on to the NFC Championship. And I'm going to go with San Francisco in that type of sense. And then I'll put San Francisco up against the Saints, type thing in that type of sense from the division weekend. Now, division-wise, it could be Cam Newton beating out the Saints, and then the 49ers trying to beat out Cam Newton after that type of fluff in the NFC Championship to prevent Cam Newton from going to the Super Bowl after winning a big division game against Drew Brees and the Saints, I think, in that type of sense. They might be on too many errors, type thing, in that type of sense, of flying high in the clouds, type thing, from that type of victory to consider loss at that point, type thing, going into the NFC Championship. Because then they would just be one game away from the Super Bowl and might not look at the rest of the competition, the NFC, as challenging as Drew Brees as a competition, type thing. So if they can take care of Brees in the division weekend, they'll take care of their next potential matchup within the NFC Championship to get into the Super Bowl. So I'm going to go ahead and say that it's going to be Brees and the Saints again in another rematch from 2 years ago or 3 years ago, 2 years ago. It might have been last year when the 49ers won the last 35 seconds to keep Brees out of the Super Bowl, type thing, with that comeback touchdown. It was like 35-31 or something like that in the end zone, the back of the end zone catch, type thing. And that's going to be a huge game. There was 2 games. It was in the division one. They won that one out, type thing, in that type of sense, because they were losing that. And then they scored like 21 unanswered, type thing, to get back into the game, type thing, in that type of sense. And then they knocked down, I think, Eli Manning, type thing, in that type of sense, with like 26 touches and knockdowns and hurries, type thing, in that type of sense, to win like 26-20 or something like that, or 24-22, so that they could go to the Super Bowl. Because they had back-to-back miracle heart stop type ones. They were hosting the Saints there, type thing, and Deshaun Golson intercepted Brees or something like that in that type of sense, and then they did a big drive back type thing. It was a big weekend. They did the same thing again versus Eli type thing in the NFC Championship to go on to the Super Bowl type thing, to face their Jim Harbaugh, to face John Harbaugh type thing in that type of sense, to face Harbaugh versus Harbaugh. One's been an administrator, the other one's the Colt quarterback type thing in that type of sense. They're different people type thing in that type of sense. They fought off against each other, face off, and it was the first family head coach Super Bowl in history, NFL history. So I don't think that's going to happen this year type thing. I think the Ravens are going to close, and then Manning is either going to go and win or go and retire type thing in that type of sense. So he's going to make it in and beat the Ravens type thing, giving the Ravens a chance to see glory of making the AFC Championship type thing and being selected the AFC champion to go to the Super Bowl type thing in that type of sense, but sadly losing to a determined Peyton Manning type thing, trying to get his second ring, to get a ring like his brother and get like his another MVP title, like 3 or 4 in the league and 2 Super Bowl MVPs type thing in that type of sense. So he'll toast the AFC champions from last year and Super Bowl champions from last year, the Ravens type thing, and he'll take them out type thing in that type of sense. Dumervil will see his old team type thing with Von Miller and things like that, and they'll lose to the Broncos. And these guys will become the champions for the AFC type thing in that type of sense. Center mass in their compass for their part of the country type thing in that type of sense. And then it'll be Saints versus 49ers, and the 49ers will want to taste glory type thing in that type of sense. Well, it'll be a hard sell because they're going to have to go into Saints territory, who will probably still be maintaining home field advantage type thing in New Orleans type thing, and beat them there again like they did beforehand type thing in some weird qualifying game into the wild card thing in that type of sense. Yeah. And then take them out type thing in that means and crush that type thing. Although the 49ers might have lost that game and sent Eli on, but I don't think they did. Yeah. So in that type of thing, and get Navarro Bauman punching out a ball as a pass protecting linebacker type thing in the end zone type thing in that type of sense, just like he did last year. Then Kaepernick will do his job in protecting the ball and running around type thing, or throwing on the run, which is his next best option type thing in that type of sense. He is ultimate frisbee football type thing in that type of sense, and he can really run from side to side and throw with a lot of accuracy, just like McNabb could type thing in that type of sense. And then there'll be Broncos. There'll be 49ers as the NFC champion. And then now we'll get like some chess pieces type thing in that type of sense. And that'll make the Broncos the let's see, the White Knight type thing in that type of sense. And that'll put them here versus the Black Knight type thing in that type of sense. So the 49ers. Broncos versus 49ers type thing in that type of sense. And then that'll be Broncos type thing versus the 49ers type thing in that type of sense. There type thing for the Super Bowl. And that's the AFC champion versus the NFC champion type thing in that type of sense. Then from there, pass protection here is NFC has become the fugly creature type thing. That's the AFC. If you got a little bit of history of it type thing in that type of sense, the AFC had those ticket sales, as we remember, like Dan Fouts and those types of people threw a lot more, like a lot more. And AFC had a lot of bombers type thing in that type of sense. It still does. Like Peyton Manning, Brady, they're all on that side type thing in that type of sense. Phillip Rivers throws a lot over there type thing in that type of sense. The NFC just recently developed bombers. They've got great people type thing, but they try to still keep them to about 250, 270 throwing type thing and get more rushing type thing in that type of sense. NFC is still a classic rushing, double tight end parcel set team type thing in that type of sense. And they've got RG3, but he rarely throws for 350 yards, although despite the injury this year type thing, they really still like to rush in there Morris and Helu type thing in that type of sense. Let's see here. Giants have Eli Manning, but they had Brandon Jacobs and DJ Ward or somebody like that in that type of sense. Tampa Bay had running. San Francisco's got Frank Gore, LaMichael James, Kendall Hunter type thing in that type of sense. There's a lot of running programs, and even though 49ers can throw 450 with Kaepernick in one or two games type thing, they still rely pretty heavily on the run, which they don't, and which they do. And in that type of sense, so a nickel package and a dime package is really not ticket sale necessary in the NFC side type thing as much as it is in the AFC side type thing. And ironically enough, that's where all that stuff comes from. So in that type of thing, AFC invented a lot of throwing type in that type of sense. You have two cornerbacks on the field in that type of sense. And then because there was so much throwing, they invented another cornerback type thing as an add-on to the two-base cornerbacks in the 3-4-4-3, which you never talk about. Darrelle Revis was first cornerback, not third cornerback type thing in that type of sense. And that would make him the first cornerback type thing, which would make him the nickel cornerback type thing. And the first cornerback was already on the field type thing. He's in the base 4-3-3-4 formation type thing. So the extra third person cornerback type thing is called the nickel cornerback type thing. It's the third cornerback on the roster. And all three cornerbacks are on the field at the same time to avoid the super passing that's been going on down the field type thing in that type of sense. And interestingly enough, for teams that have two wide receivers type thing in that type of sense, and then they put a tight end like Gronkowski to become a receiver type thing in that type of sense, he takes the handoff type thing behind the scrimmage type thing. He catches the ball down the field. He receives the ball down the field type thing in that type of sense, in a reception sense. So that makes him a receiver, along with the Deion Branch or the other receivers type thing in that type of sense. So whoever's there type thing, Edelman and Amendola type thing. So it's two receivers in that type of sense, and Amendola and Edelman type thing. And then that's Gronkowski type thing, and that's the third. So it's three receivers versus the nickel formation type thing in that type of sense. And that's why it was created type thing, and that means. Because of those three receivers that can hit the field type thing in that type of sense. It's very complicated type thing in that type of thing. That's Edelman type thing in that type of sense. That's one. And that's one for Amendola, Danny Amendola, who was traded there type thing in that type of sense. And then that's one for Gronkowski type thing. That's 1, 2, and 3. First, second, and then third. Third's represented by a 3 type thing in that type of sense. And so that's very complicated type thing in that type of sense. And so from that type thing and that type of thing, you get a cornerback 1, cornerback 2 type thing, and nickel cornerback type thing, which is the cornerback 3 type thing to cover them. So that's why the nickel formation is in that type of sense. if you make it funky and lineup type thing, like the Arsenal people type thing in that type of sense, then you'll have like a 2-4-5, a 2-4-3-2 formation type thing in that type of sense, and soccer type thing, and bar. Real quick here, the AFC I believe is based off the Hall of Famer Hollis, the chief general manager owner, and it's HOLLIS type thing in that type of sense. That one I can probably put on here. And this is Hollis. They switched them from those mural ones type thing that used to be like this type thing to here, to that Tiffany Award type thing in that type of sense, that sterling silver one type thing that's a kickoff tee football that's smaller than and cuter than the Super Bowl silver Lombardi trophy type thing in that type of sense. Got you. That's Lombardi. That's Hollis. And this one's Hallis type thing in that type of sense. Yeah. So ho ha, and hey ho type thing in that type of sense. Yeah. So in that type of thing, that's named after. This is the one from Kansas City, and Hallis is the one from Chicago, president, general manager type thing in that type of sense, and their owner type thing. And he's in the Hall of Fame too, Coach Hall of Fame and player. I think both of them. One of them was a player. So in that type of sense, they named that award for the NFC Championship one type thing from Hallis, and the AFC one from Hollis type thing in that type of sense. And then like the President's Trophy in hockey type thing, and then they go to the Stanley Cup. I don't think the Stanley Cup is the President's Trophy or the Whale Trophy. Those are in the different divisions type thing, that type of sense. And then you got Hollis to the Lombardi Trophy type thing. And that's to the Lombardi Trophy, which is the AFC. That's the undisputed WWE title type thing. And that's SmackDown versus Raw type thing, that type of sense. And the different shows type thing, that type of sense. Each show has their own belt. And then each show falls under preview or purview of the WWE, and that's where they have the WWE Undisputed belt type thing that encompasses all its organization shows that it's ever run type thing. That's its Undisputed champion belt type thing. Better than all of them. Yeah. Better than SmackDown, better than Raw, ECW, which would be a hard stretch to say them, better than ECW type thing. All its branches fall underneath the WWE thing, and it has a title branch type thing, that type of sense. And that's still complicated type thing of visualization. That's a WWE. It has a belt type thing, that type of sense. That's from the WWE in a binary tree type thing. If you turn it on its side type thing, it's the ancestry tree. That's SmackDown type thing. It has a belt, but it's not the Supreme Court belt type thing. That's a WWE belt. And then that's the Raw belt type thing, that type of sense. And it has a belt, but neither one of them is Supreme belt of the WWE belt type thing, that type of sense. Each show has a belt champion type thing, just like the AFC and NFC. And then it has a Super Bowl belt type thing, that type of sense. And if ECW was there type thing, it has a belt type thing, that type of sense. And then the women's and men's type thing, and international and US type thing. All those things are belts, but they're not the undisputed belt of the WWE gold belt type thing, that type of sense. That Proximo belt. That's just nice hardware type thing. So in that type of thing, in that type of sense, that's the main belt type thing in that type of sense. But that's another story. All right. Anyway, Hollis, Hunt, and Lombardi Trophy, and we're gonna go to the Super Bowl. In Barclay, what do you call formation type thing, and so it only uses 2 lead scorers instead of 4, but it has repercussion midfielders type thing that always act like an advanced goalie type thing in that type of sense, and getting any ball that escapes right back up to its to an assist type thing. They kidnap the ball. They steal the ball type thing in that type of sense, like an interception. Pass it around type thing, form as an assist back up to the 2 lead scorers type thing, and let them keep peppering the net. So now you've got 2 scorers type thing in that type of sense, with 4 midfielders behind them type thing to make sure that the ball doesn't escape and get it back to their scorers who can keep shooting at the goalie type thing in that type of sense. And that is the Arsenal soccer formation type thing in that type of sense. And it tries to act like a goalie with these 4 midfielders rather than act with 4 scorers and only 1 or 2 midfielders type thing, where the ball, once it escapes out of from the peppering type thing, really escapes out of the midfield type thing and back to the other side type thing in that type of sense. And it tries to keep that ball from escaping back over midfield like goalies type thing in that type of sense, but they're not goalies, they're midfielders type thing, and keep it on their side and get it back to their scorers type thing so that they can try to keep scoring. It's really, really aggressive type thing in that type of sense. So in that type of thing, even though it's very defensive in posture type thing, It's trying to make sure that it keeps a type of 6-person safety net around the ball at all times in the quarter of the field type thing on their side of the field. From the way that they structured their personnel type thing and that type of thing. And it's fairly, well, anyway. So in that type of sense, that's 6 people type thing. The same thing is for these 3 cornerbacks type thing. They're out in the field. You had 2 people to them type thing. That's safeties type thing. That's a 5. Then you've got your linebackers out there. And then you still got your down lineman type thing. A nickel 3-3-5, and it's got the nickel cornerback in the 5 with the safeties type thing in that type of sense. The nickel is on the field in a go pattern type thing in that type of sense. Now if you subtract 1 type thing in that type of sense, and then you add here type thing, that's 3, subtract 1 from the linebackers, that's 2, add that 1 you subtracted to the cornerbacks, and add a dime cornerback, that's a 3-2-6, or the dime dollar type thing in that type of sense. If this was a 4-1-6 type thing, 6 plus 1 is 7, 7 plus 4 is 11 type thing, then that would be a regular dime type thing that means. So these things were invented because this side of the field created more passing, and they needed better defense, pass defense technology to compete against it type thing in that type of sense. And they still wanted to maintain their linebackers out there, so they started changing the formation of the nickel and the dime to accommodate for all the different type of variability and functionality that the offense was countering with. So you gave birth to the 4-2-5 nickel, gave birth to the Steelers 1-5-5 prowl, gave birth to the Patriots nickel 3-3-5 used against the Rams in the Rams' second trip to the Super Bowl. The first one they beat the Titans type thing, Dyson reached out a yard short type thing from the end zone type thing, that type of sense, and the Rams won that Super Bowl type thing. They went back the next year type thing. Patriots had 2 interceptions in there type thing, that type of sense, and I think both were returned for touchdowns type thing. Versus, and Warner had never had the chance to throw against a lot of AFC defense coverage type thing in that type of sense, being an NFC team, and he ended up throwing into the coverages of the nickel 3-3-5 type thing in that type of sense. 3 plus 3 is 6 plus 5 is 11 on their side. He threw into that nickel 3-3-5 and got 2 interceptions type thing. He threw into 2 interceptions. They scored that. Brady protected the ball, was a 250 less yard quarterback type thing, and then they kicked the game-winning field goal with Vinatieri type thing and won that game type thing in that type of sense. And no one had really seen a nickel 3-3-5 beforehand type thing. That nickel 3-3-5 quietly slipped into history that is pretty much overlooked. Now, in that timeline type thing in that type of sense, the NFC still runs the ball. When you run the ball, you stuff 7 or 8 in a box. You don't have time to keep 3 cornerbacks on the field with 2 safeties type thing in that type of sense. They're good tacklers, but you might as well switch back up to a 4-3 or 3-4 type thing or 46. It makes more sense type thing versus a powerful run team type thing, especially a run first team like most of the NFC type thing in that type of sense. Now, there's a couple freaks in that show type thing in that type of sense. RG3 is a freak of it, but they use Helu and Morris type thing in that type of sense. So technically, by the numbers type thing in that type of sense, the amount of attempt run back type thing that they have with their running backs in the field type thing, they still use more running back than throwing, even though RG3's talent would suggest that they throw more than 40 or 50 times a game. They don't. They run for far more than that per game than they do type thing than they throw. So his talent, even though it's tremendous type thing, it's not as astronomical part of the frequency distribution of dimming type thing as one is trying to make it out to be type thing in that type of sense. Stratford, on the other hand, is different because he does throw about 40 to 50 attempts to Megatron and crew in Detroit type thing in that type of sense. And Drew Brees is different because he has a 5 wide receiver set in the NFC South division, even though they're a NFC team. They use a model much like the Rams type thing with a 4 or 5 wide receiver spread system type thing, loading up running backs and tight ends within the 5 slots type thing in that type of sense to throw around to type thing in that type of sense. And it's a bit different from the NFC type thing in that type of sense because they don't have a tradition of running the 1-5-5 prowl over there in the NFC. They don't have the tradition of running the nickel 3-3-5 prowl over in the NFC. They don't have the tradition of running the 49ers 4-2-5 robber type thing in that type of sense over in the NFC. So basically, in their divisions, they're ill-equipped to take on the passing offense of Brees type thing, and he throws all around them because they don't have the right coverage to break that stuff down type thing and get interceptions and get to discourage them from passing down the field. And since he can't be discouraged to not pass down the field, he just stays in the pocket and just riddles them apart type thing in that type of sense. If they had a nickel cornerback and a dime cornerback out there with more knockdowns type thing or deflections and interceptions type thing, maybe Brees would hand off the ball more rather than trying to throw the ball more. But that has not happened type thing in that type of sense, and he just continues to throw for ease through his division type thing in that type of sense. Until they can get a prevent defense, like a Hail Mary prevent defense, to cover Breeze's throwing attempts type thing in that type of sense, he will continue to throw the ball until he's deterred, told not to type thing in that type of sense. And a defense has to do that type thing, much like a box. If you're not going to bring power to bear within a box type thing in that type of sense, then we're going to keep handing the ball off to run, pushing all you aside type thing in that type of sense, and running right through the middle. Yeah. That's what we're going to keep doing. Except for now, this isn't the run game, this is a pass game. And down the field type thing in that type of sense, they don't have good corners type thing on most teams. The Saints do, but they're the Saints. Breeze is on the Saints team. And in those corners type thing, the corners can't cover the receivers type thing in that type of sense, and they're an inadequate package, so they probably don't even have the nickel or dime back on the field to cover all the receivers type thing, and there's always a receiver open for Breeze to hit to type thing in that type of sense. And then that's just easy yardage type thing and that type of thing of throwing down the field. Very complicated type thing in that type of sense. So they need to switch up their DEFCON packages to deal with the threat level type thing that Breeze provides type thing in that type of sense, and no one will type thing. Hence why he can throw the ball for 400 plus or near 400 yards every weekend. Until they change that, the attitude that they give Breeze type thing in that type of sense, he's going to take that extra inch type thing on them type thing in that type of sense and riddle them apart. And it's slowly starting to happen more in the NFC type thing. Cutler's with Chicago type thing, but he's injured. Aaron Rodgers threw a lot type thing, thanks to Aaron Rodgers type thing in the Atlanta game type thing where he scored 7 or 6 touchdowns type thing in that type of sense. In an NFC championship game, through the run? No, through the AFC air. So in that type of sense, and the NFC didn't know how to do that type thing. We can defend the run. We've got Urlacher, or had Urlacher be a middle linebacker and stuff up the run. Urlacher can stuff up the blitz type thing in that type of sense. Breeze holds the ball for 1.6 seconds, 1.3 seconds to 5 wide receivers type thing in a spread offense type thing in a shotgun. Urlacher's probably not going to make it to Breeze's face in time to not deter him to not throw the ball type thing. It's completed pass type thing. It's touchdown after touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. It's touchdown after touchdown after touchdown type thing in that type of sense. He just can't be stopped type thing. There's no other coverage like him type thing. There's Hester with Urlacher, but they have to guess right, and Peppers type thing in that type of sense. That's still, Hester takes care of one of the receivers type thing. That's 5 receivers minus 1, so it's 4 left type thing, plus the box pressure type thing. The box can force Breeze to throw faster type thing, but he's already throwing in a release decision at 1.3 seconds type thing. So it's basically 4 receivers that Breeze can choose from within 1.3 seconds type thing. I think that's going to lose 9 times out of 10. Hence why he's getting the results that he's doing. It seems complicated, but simple math shows that it really isn't. It's just receivers that are open versus the speed in which he can make a decision to hit them. And until they get a defense like a dime package, which has 4 cornerbacks in it, then maybe they might slow that down, type thing in that type of sense, and keep Breeze from throwing all around the place. Very complicated math, forced into some other things from the seeding type thing in that type of sense, but in some ways, it's a little bit more worked out, I guess. And in that type of thing, that's AFC and NFC type thing. Now, that does help me with my story type thing with the seed, though, type thing in that type of sense. The 49ers are a team type thing that are unorthodox type thing in that type of sense. That linebacker secondary type thing in that type of sense is an ABC type thing. And that A thing, you build up the power of the box like Pepper's people. Your B thing, you build up linebackers. And your C thing type thing in that type of sense, you build up your cornerbacks and safeties type thing. Now, they did boost up this type thing in that type of sense, but if you've got like 2 or 3 extra linebackers on your sideline type thing in that type of sense, you can switch to a nickel 155 prowl type thing in your ABC thing, and the nickel 155, that's 1, and that's 5 type thing in that type of sense. That's 5 plus 5, which is 10, plus 1 is 11. And now, notice in this formation, has 5 linebackers out in the field type thing in that type of sense to utilize in striking type thing, but only 1 defensive tackle, no defensive ends unless you sub them out type thing. And in that type of sense, you can sub the linebackers in for the defensive ends, but now they're not in the section type thing, in the second section type thing in that type of sense, in the finger cuff thing of it type thing in that type of sense, which is what you wanted type thing of a 4-3, which actually had 2 defensive ends, 2 defensive tackles, and 3 linebackers type thing in that type of sense, without some sub in and out of their position type thing and the other position not being filled. That is not what you wanted type thing in that type of sense, so it's dicey. But in that type of thing, in that type of sense, for some teams that have the extra linebackers and the extra cornerbacks and safeties type thing, they don't care. Yeah. And it serves their advantage once they're versus 3 wide receivers type thing in that type of sense. So This is a Steelers formation. It's called the nickel 1-5-5 prowl, as named by its divisions type thing. The down lineman has 1, the 1 to 5 to 5. Nickel 1. And the nickel cornerback's out in the field type thing, that type of sense. Then I should get a nickel type thing here, but that's a nickel person type thing here, and that's a nickel person, and then you just read, even though you put their nickel name at the beginning type thing, that type of sense, so they're nickels in the coverage, you put the nickel in the front type thing, and then you say the whole thing type thing, just like Boondocks with the Tribe Quest thing. And so it's the nickel 1-5-5 type thing. The nickel cornerback's out in the field in a 1-5-5 formation. Very longitude, latitude type thing. Doesn't try to leave a lot of math in it. 5 secondary, 5 linebackers, 1 down person who puts his hands down type thing, that type of sense. A defensive tackle. Done. Now in that type of thing, linebacker subs in for them. It's true, but a linebacker, Hainsworth is 330 pounds. A linebacker can come up and put his hands down type thing and also be 330 pounds, but they're usually 240 to 260 type thing in that type of sense, giving up 90 pounds to the 2 Elvis Hainsworth and the 2 defensive tackles that wouldn't have been out there type thing in that type of sense. 2 defensive tackles, that's 1, and that's 2 defensive tackles type thing, like the Williams brothers in Minnesota type thing, and then Jared Allen and his end type thing in that type of sense, like a Chris Long and Quinn type thing in that type of thing, and that's 2 there type thing, that's 3 and 4 type thing. That's 1 defensive tackle and the 2nd defensive tackle in the middle, and the 2 defensive ends, 2 plus 2 type thing is 4, plus the 3 linebackers is 7, plus the 2 safeties is 9, plus the 2 cornerbacks on the outside is 11. And so they name them for that, but the secondary umbrella type thing is 4 off of 11, that's 7, 4, 3, 4 plus 3 is 7 type thing in that type of sense, and that's what it has. 4 down linemen, 3 linebackers, flip them around, 4 linebackers subbing out some of the defensive ends, defensive tackle arrangement type thing, and 3 down linemen type thing in that type of sense for 4 hunting pack, wolf pack linebackers type thing in that type of sense. And the linebackers are more pushed to the outside, starting 9 on the body position type thing, outside shoulder type thing in that type of sense. And that's why they're good. Even if it's a toss play, they're unabated type thing in that type of sense, then they might have clear range on the running back and drill them type thing, or be pushed down type thing in that type of sense. But if that is not so, and they're hold on to the ball type thing, and they see the play action, they might just run to the blind side of the quarterback and strip, or just hit them through the kidney or around the love handle action type thing in that type of sense. Try not to be flipped over with the wrap type thing and barrel roll the quarterback type thing in that type of sense, and that's a sack. Very complicated math. Easier to say that it's not going to happen than it is type thing for what could actually happen type thing, which is 0 on the other side of it type thing in that type of sense. So in that type of thing, I'm not sure how they get sacks otherwise other than luck, because there's always an offensive turnout answer type thing in that type of sense. So that's pretty much malarkey. In that type of thing, now there's only a couple teams on the NFC type thing in that type of sense. So now you've got AFC that's throwing type thing versus an AFC defense type thing that puts the dime package out there type thing, or variant formation nickels type thing in that type of sense. Now you've got a run in NFC type thing, except for Drew Brees type thing in that type of sense, who actually needs an AFC defense type thing to drop down from here to face his throwing style of dime package and nickel variant package and 326 dime dollar package type thing to prevent its passing down the field type thing in that type of sense. Well, no one in the NFC is really trained with that type of defensive structuring type thing in that type of sense, because they're not used to seeing it type thing. They're used to seeing 40 to 50 run plays per game type thing. They don't use the dime that much. So in that type of thing, in that type of sense, but the 49ers do. They're fugly built type thing in that type of sense. And the 4-2-5 robber of the nickel type thing is one of their base formations type thing in that type of sense. They might have 30 to 50 Mike Martz plays in it type thing in that type of sense. So they're fairly used to using the nickel type thing. And they've got a variant of it that's lighter type thing and conjugagrammatical type thing in that type of sense. From that type thing in that type of sense, they might do 30 to 20 dime dollar plays, a 3-2-6 formation type thing in that type of sense, with 4 cornerbacks on the field. The first 2, the nickel cornerback, and then the dime cornerback type thing in that type of sense. 4 cornerbacks type thing in that type of thing. Those 4 cornerbacks are used to working with the safeties type thing and covering the pass like Drew Brees type thing. Hence why they probably won against Drew Brees type thing. Kept him in control, forced a running game to Patrick Willis type thing and Navarro Bauman type thing in that type of sense, and made that easy type thing. They didn't have to keep dropping back in short pass. You could step up in the box type thing and make a difference type thing in that type of sense, because there was too much pass protection down the field type thing. And then switched their formation back from the dime dollar type thing back to nickel 4-2-5, back to 3-4 variant type thing in that type of sense, and just crush Breeze off the field type thing in that type of sense. And that's why they won into the NFC Championships, or probably will again this year. And then they'll be facing against the Broncos type thing, who haven't really faced the 49ers like that since preseason. They didn't see their best stuff. So in that type of sense, the Broncos passing from Eric Decker to Demaryius Thomas, from Manning to Demaryius Thomas to Manning to Julius Thomas, Thomas and Thomas, I know they sound like they're brothers, but they're not, and to throwing to Wes Welker type thing, that's 4 receivers type thing, plus Jacob Tatum, that's 5, and that's No-Show Marino, that's 6. That's going to take something funky to deal with. Fortunately, they're facing a funky pass defense team in the 49ers with the nickel 4-2-5, the dime dollar 3-2-6 with the dime cornerback and the nickel cornerback on the field with 2 safeties type thing in that type of sense, and the first 2 cornerbacks type thing in that type of sense, and the quarter prevent defense with the 5th cornerback on the field, or in some other variants, the one that I like type thing, 2 free safeties type thing, the strong safety, and 4 cornerbacks type thing in that type of sense. The first 2, the nickel cornerback and the dime cornerback. That's 4 cornerbacks plus 3 safeties. That's 7 defenders type thing in that type of sense. And then Willis can still form as a spy in the middle of the field and use his 130 combo, mostly solo tackle future type thing that he had from his first 2 years in the NFL to step up into the pocket, not worrying about what's happening behind his back shoulder type thing with Carlos Rogers or Nnamdi Asima or Parrish Cox type thing, or Eric Wright from Tampa Bay type thing, or Eric Reed, R-E-I-D, instead of the double E-D type thing, that type of sense, which is the same thing type thing, that type of thing, R-E-E-D, R-E-I-D type thing, that type of sense. They're different people. That's the son of the college hurdler, NCAA record holder type thing in that type of sense. And he's really good type thing. And in that type of sense, and Dante Whitner, the Hitner. And so all those people are behind Willis type thing as the pass protection umbrella type thing. Then in that type of sense, Willis really doesn't have to join them type thing. He can just step away from Nnamdi Asima as the nickel or dime cornerback, Parrish Cox and Carlos Rogers and Eric Wright and Dante Whitner and Eric Reed step into the pocket type thing and go search down the quarterback or the halfback draw. Whatever he wants to do type thing. Glenn Dorsey's up there type thing in that type of sense. So is Ray McDonald type thing in that type of sense. And given their formation, they still in a dime 3-2-6, a dime dollar 3-2-6, they have 2 linebackers in that type thing in that type of sense. And from that 3-2-6 type thing in that type of sense, that's here, didn't make those letters type thing in that type of sense. That is 3 down linemen, 2 linebackers, which means one's Patrick Willis type thing in that type of sense. And 1 in that type of sense is, in that type of thing there, is Navarro Bowman. 1 plus 1 is 2 type thing in that type of sense. That's 5 people. Then that's 4 cornerbacks in there type thing in that type of sense. And that's 1 safety type thing. That's 2 safeties, the free safety and the strong safety type thing in that type of sense. Got to write that over itself type thing in that type of sense. And its math might be a little bit more apparent type thing in that type of sense. And that's free over strong, and those are both the same words. The free safety is the center fielder. The strong safety is the one who usually comes up in a box, but doesn't have a beta option type thing to be pass protection. Both of them are in zone type thing. That's 2 people in zone. That's 2 zones, a coverage of 2 zones, or a cover 2. Very complicated math, longitude, latitude, GPS, map coordinates type thing in that type of sense. If you want it to be, it'll be one of the, it just won't be workable math type thing in that type of sense, and it really should have been. So in that type of thing, that's 3-2-6 type thing in that type of sense. Should have been, would have, could have, horseshoes, hand grenades, H-bombs type thing, something childish like that in that type of sense. And in that type of thing there, type thing in that type of sense, that's your this formation type thing, the 49ers can do type thing, and it's a variant off of that nickel 4-2-5 thing in that type of sense. It's already fugly, and in that type of sense, it made something fugglier in the breakdown of cornerbacks, linebackers, and down linemen type thing, of defensive tackles and Glenn Dorsey defensive ends type thing in that type of sense. But that's okay. And now that's the stuff that Peyton Manning will be throwing against type thing. And that could provide the 49ers defense wins championship, could provide the 49ers if Colin Kaepernick doesn't do anything done with the ball and tries to become too much of a Superman. Sometimes he looks at the rest of the field, can't wait for the rest of the quarter, kickstart itself type thing, that type of sense, and has to be a difference maker. But in that type of thing, and then throws an interception or a fumble type thing for not carrying it up, he's a smart man though. And so in that type of thing, he's got Gore, he's got Vernon Davis, he's got split back and full house formations with Bruce Miller and LaMichael James, and screens and wide receiver screens to Mario Manningham and to Michael Crabtree, and Anquan Bolden's a good screen person to use type thing in a wide receiver screen. and he's a strong wide receiver type thing. If they can use those types of things, stay smart, keep people running away from the box to do coverage, and then use your quarterback draw, halfback draw type thing with Frank Gore or Colin Kaepernick stretching out his legs from the pocket type thing and making smart slides and decisions type thing around the field. They're a good team. They're pretty variable. And in that type of thing, in that type of sense, they've got Vernon Davis. They've got Michael James for a screen, does punt returns and kickoff returns. It's pretty fast. Yeah. And in that type of sense, they've got Mario Manningham, used to be with the Giants, caught that halftime catch on the left side of the field type thing in that type of sense, with the Willie Mays catch near the sideline type thing. And he does do screens, and he does do slot receiving type thing. It's pretty smart. Yeah. They've got Crabtree, just came back type thing in that type of sense. They've got John Bolin from the Chiefs type thing. Hasn't really been utilized type thing in that type of sense. Kaepernick's got weapons to throw to. He's got Vernon Davis to throw downfield to type thing in that type of sense. He's got Frank Gore to screen to type thing. I know it's rare. And he's got a full house screen type thing or bubble screen where he can get both tight ends on one side type thing in that type of sense, or one tight end, then the other tight end in a full house or in the slot type thing, and then have them merge together type thing for block and then throw the screen to Frank Gore type thing and run behind that type thing in that type of sense off the line. Most tight ends were 240, 260 type thing, and 6'1" or 6'2". Gronkowski's 276 type thing in that type of sense. Easy blockers on the edge type thing with their basketball receiving way type thing in that type of sense. For Frank Gore to run behind type thing as a start establishment type thing. Frank Gore brings up speed. It's not really a bow out type thing to the sidelines type thing. So you see the math of that. Yeah. In that type of thing, Broncos got Peyton Manning type thing throwing No-Show Marino. Julius Thomas, Eric Decker, good cuts of Wes Welker type thing in that type of sense. Demarius Thomas, Eric Decker, Julius Thomas. I probably said both their names already. Jacob Tame, who was with them with the Colts type thing. All good readers of defense coverage and back reporters with Manning's visual Sherlock Holmes, Robert Downey Jr. Deduction reasoning type things for where the voids are going to be in the defense coverage type thing. Looks at a lot of Polaroids, has a lot of great Wild Wild West, Clint Eastwood anticipation type thing in that type of sense. Of OK Corral working his shots through the fence line type thing. So, very dangerous people type thing. Should be a good matchup for a Super Bowl. Hopefully 49ers, but I see I better go 49ers type thing. Peyton Manning could go back type thing in that type of sense and get another ring. Or this could be the 49ers wake-up call from last weekend, as they've been now dominating people at 26-3, 26-10, like repeatedly in weekends, type thing in that type of sense. This could be their chance and build up through the playoffs and on to the Super Bowl has been the only defense answer for the Broncos in the Super Bowl. All right, that would be a tough gig to follow type thing. Both of them have heart troubles type thing. Let's see, Harbaugh's got something inserted into his chest type thing for his heart. And Fox had a heart attack type thing. Both are going to be fighting with a lot of passion and tears type thing. A lot of city effort. San Francisco and Denver, great cities in the United States, of course. Being U.S., go U.S. And for them to not think that any U.S. city wasn't great anywhere. So, but there's going to be a lot of passion, a lot of stuff on that national championship, the Super Bowl type thing, that type of sense on the line. And a lot of them have a lot of backstory type thing. So it's going to be a tough game. Should be a good game. So good luck 49ers. Good luck Manning and your history type thing. Made a YouTube video. Knew that you had arm strength left and had good decision making left in the head type thing in that type of sense. And it showed with 40 touchdowns before December. Yeah. And in that type of thing, congratulations on your record in future and breaking the touchdown record back from Brady type thing, the 50 touchdowns that he did in combination with Moss type thing, and your 49 touchdown record type thing, that type of sense. Still got to pull for the 49ers. I do like their defense and Harbaugh type thing, and do appreciate your fandom. But if you win type thing, that type of sense, can't think of a better person to win. Better man. Definitely can't think of a better man to win. Thanks again, NFL. Thanks to everybody listening, and have a great one out there. This has been Chad Brown, Dipping Sage Block 9, 1J+1 Lean Orbs, and this is the AFC NFC playoff seed chart.